Well, thank you all for attending this session. We're really excited to talk to everybody about doing more with less, as I just said. I've got some really exciting panelists. I've got to know them over the last day or two. Come on in, we're just getting started, Malice. And really excited to talk about, how we're doing more with less, right? Not to continue hitting on that. Before we go ahead and jump in, I'd love to hear from each of you a little bit about your role at your respective organizations and what it is that you do there to provide some context and color to the conversation. I think it's really a great way to kind of start things off. So Shalini, I'll start with you.
Yep. Hi, everyone. My name is Shalini Chander. I'm Director of Product on the software side with Invisalign, Align Technology. So we make Invisalign. I know that this is marketing based, but from a product perspective, a lot of what I work on is, while it is defining what our future product is, it just goes hand in hand with how are we going to go out to market with it? What does that mean for our strategy and then for our customer strategy?
Yeah, Shalini, I'm so excited to have the product perspective up here. I think it's going to bring a really thoughtful part of the conversation. Yeah. Julie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Elias. I'm the Director of Communications and Marketing for Boston University's School of Dental Medicine. I consider us sort of like a hybrid organization between higher ed and healthcare. We operate 3 dental clinics in Boston. They are teaching facilities where our students learn to become dentists. They're comprehensive care clinics. We have all the different dental specialties. They are revenue generating. So I oversee marketing for these clinics. I also oversee the larger communications and marketing team, and that's web, social, video, photography. Pretty much, we're a very small team. We do a lot with a little because we are a nonprofit. So kind of touch on a lot of everything, but my specialty is digital marketing.
So how big is your team, just for context?
My team is 5 people. I'm the sole marketer, and then we have, one person who does web, one person who does social, one person who handles video and photo. So we are very small, and yeah, we try to compete.
Is that similar to anybody else here in the room? Raise your hands. You have a team of, call it, 1 to 5-ish? Okay. Okay, so then is there teams of, let's say, 5 to 20-ish? Anybody in that realm? What about bigger than 20 to 100, let's say? Okay. All right, last but definitely not least, Jeremy.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Jeremy Rogers. I lead digital marketing and experience at IU Health in Indiana. Go Hoosiers. I think we're all Hoosiers this week if you're not a Miami fan. My team supports all digital channels, so mostly consumer and patient facing across the entire customer journey. So acquisition, pre-care, care delivery, post-care. Think about things like CRM, CDP, patient portal, all that fun stuff. I've been with the system for about 10 years. This is my first and only role in healthcare, so I still consider myself a bit of a neophyte in healthcare. Even after 10 years, I learn new stuff every day. That's what I like the most about my job.
Yeah. And how big is your team?
We're about 22. I think we have 1 open position right now.
Okay. And Shalini, coming back to you, how big is your team?
So I'm on product. So our product team is probably about 35 people for the entire company, or like a global product team. And then if you then divide or take our counterparts, global product, and there's a global channel marketing, and then regional marketing. So once you start adding up all the marketing, we're getting to about 800 people across all countries, local markets, et cetera.
Awesome.
But we funnel down from a global, 35, maybe another 40 people in the channel global marketing, and then funnel it down through there.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So we've got perspective across the board here. I love hearing that. So, as we all know, doing more with less, right? There's a lot of things that go into that. There's, especially in today's current climate, economic uncertainty, budgets being cut. eMarketer ran a survey recently that said budgets from 23 into 24 decreased by an average of 21%. And they expect probably similar things to be the results of they're going to run the same thing as they look at 24 versus 25. We're obviously just coming to the end of 25, but we expect that to be similar. In the same breath, they asked CMOs and marketing teams, what is the most, the most important thing you focus on in 2026? And 70% of respondents said efficiency and productivity, which arguably boils back down to the topic that we're talking about here today. So we'll dive into a bunch of different areas. We'll talk about, organic marketing and what that represents in today's marketplace, shifts from organic being a major part of every pillar to being foundational and maybe less of an investment strategy today, less traditional, focusing on the patient and really what their experience is, what that looks like at each of your organizations. Talking hopefully about the electronic health records system and how you're intersecting or not, or aspirationally maybe hoping to get there one day as well. So to kick things off, I think everyone in this room can at least understand, if not be in the circumstances that most healthcare marketers are finding themselves in and being asked to do more with less. Let's kick things off, and to frame the conversation, how does today's environment for each of you, especially you, Jeremy, you mentioned being at your organization for 8-9 years now, how does this environment compare to other stressful situations that you've been in when being asked to do more? For instance, during COVID, right? Like, how does this environment today and what you're working on today differ from challenges that you've been asked from the business in the past?
Yeah, so I could start. I think it's wildly different. I think COVID had its challenges, the frantic pace, changing priorities day by day. The difference now I find is like our supply-demand curve is upside down. Most of our clinics, all of our hospitals are already operating at capacity. So in that environment, what people are asking of marketing teams is much different. We want to grow, but not all growth is created equally. So how do we apply more strategy and more alignment around that? So, in this world of kind of stretching budgets, I hate to say do more with less, it makes me cringe. So let's say stretching budgets. In that paradigm, how are we focusing our efforts, really being very laser focused on those areas that are most strategic, where do drive the best care outcomes, best bottom line, downstream revenue, all those things. We're very, very much focused on that now versus top of funnel opening access to everyone.
And how is that, how is that going for you, right? And like, where are you at in that journey, and what are you planning on doing in 2026?
Yeah, it's been painful, as you can imagine. I think marketers who've been around since before COVID, they're used to just doing acquisition every want to bring in a new patient. That's great. Now it's a lot more about loyalty and share of wallet and in driving that long-term relationship. It's painful because the way we do our brand planning is very different. There's a lot more iteration there. I would say, frankly, a lot of our brand managers are playing more small ball. They're not playing for the home run, hit for the fences anymore. They're looking for incrementality, which is not a bad thing at all. But we have huge access issues, and kind of there's a plot chart that we use that kind of plots out access and the experience, our NPS at a clinic level, and then the financial viability. And we look at all those dimensions like kind of Chinese checkers, like how do you align those together? And it's painful because it changes a lot. The market dynamics are evolving quite a bit. So it creates an environment where we can't do annual brand planning anymore. It's typically quarterly or even more frequent than that, kind of refreshing, reframing where we're spending money, how are we being stewards for the dollars we do have to make sure we're squeezing every ounce out that we can. Mm-hmm. That's where most of the effort's at.
Yeah. Shalini, I'd love to hear your perspective on, again, starter question here.
Yeah.
Coming back to that, would love to hear more about that.
I think that what seems really different, we've gone through all of these like budget cuts and the doing more or less like requests historically. What seems really different right now is, especially in the past year, things have changed so rapidly with like so much focus on AI, right? So there's, from management, you're getting more of a directive of they're not willing to take no for an answer. I think traditionally you used to be able to come back and say, okay, listen, we were forced to reprioritize. And so there's only X amount that can be delivered. And now they're coming back and saying, nope, you have to deliver everything. But we're still going to cut your budget by 30%. So you cannot hire the vendors that you used to hire, or you cannot have extraneous support. So I think with that comes this aspect of, okay, everyone's expected to use some sort of AI tool that hasn't even been developed yet to get all this work done. And at the same time, what that leads to, I think, is these different versions of every individual person saying, okay, well, I'll just be scrappy and get some initiative done. And what happens when everyone is individually scrappy? We're all scrappy in different ways. There's no consistency. And so I think I see that as a challenge that people aren't discussing as much yet. They're just starting to, I think we're just at that point of the cycle where we're acknowledging that AI isn't perfect. And now I think it's going to come next. One of the things I've been trying to promote in the product team this year is like, hey, if we're going to use new tools anytime, it doesn't matter if it's AI or not, any sort of new tool, we have to do it consistently as a team, take a team approach. And if we all just go off and make up our own rules on how we're going to do stuff, it might be faster. You may have a couple early wins, but nothing is actually consistent. So I think that's a big change that we need to really discuss.
Yeah. Julie, I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like what is different in this moment versus what during COVID, I think that what's similar to me is the reactivity of the moment. And that's sort of how we've been operating, is this like reactive marketing structure is, our leadership is coming to me and saying, we need X number of patients, we need X number of patients for this specialty, like how are we gonna get it, how are we gonna get it now? And for a while, Google, like we talked about this in previous sessions, but paid search was like working pretty well for that. And it was like, okay, I'm reacting to their need for X number of, say, for us, implant patients. Okay, Google Ads is performing and it's working. And budgetarily, we're able to actually compete in that space because our benefit is that our prices are low. So we were using that for a while as the way that we could compete with, doing more with less. I could compete with private practice because we're charging much less. So the demand was there. But with the shifts in paid search, it's not really working anymore. So we can't compete at that level. We can't pay that much per conversion, that much per click, and continue throwing money at Google Ads the way that private practice can. So I think for us, it's really like shifting the conversation around, okay, stop being so reactive. What are the specialties where we can throw that money towards, where we're getting the revenue back from it? And something like our campaigns around comprehensive care, where we're not seeing the immediate revenue that's generated the way we see it through, for us, again, implants, cosmetic procedures, we see much more immediate revenue back, whereas comprehensive care dental is a longer game. We have to get this patient to come back and back and back. So maybe it's not throwing as much money there in paid search, but it's doing a lot more around brand and reputation building and trust. So for us, I think like shifting away from the reactivity and being really strategic around like specialty and what specialty is worth spending the money on and how we kind of can compete in that marketplace where we really don't have the budgets that private practice does.
So you mentioned
Yeah.
ending things there with, you don't have the budgets that some of your competitors
Exactly.
maybe necessarily have, and budgets are oftentimes tight. Right now, we continue to hear that, and oftentimes declining. I wonder, Julie and others, what tactics are you thinking about stopping that have previously worked? You mentioned the tightening of Google and what that looks like potentially. What are some things that, again, I'm talking about marketing spend, but applicable to you in your way too, I'd love to hear, what are some of the things you're not doing, maybe that you were doing a year or two ago, and what's one or two things that you're thinking about doing, but potentially haven't started as you look at the rest of this year as it relates to trying to achieve more outside of what has worked in the past? Julie, we'll start with you.
Yeah. So again, really pulling back, not stopping paid search, obviously, but pulling back and really leaning into more of the influencer creator stuff. That's really where we want to focus. TikTok, we're partnering with a lot of our, we have some provider creators, like provider influencers. So partnering with some of those provider influencers to create that influencer content, to jump on in the dental world, like these trends and kind of getting on top of like the TikTok trends. That's really where we want to go. And not even necessarily jumping right into TikTok ads, but really like honing in on our like creator content and influencer content and building up that like basically meeting, obviously, as we talked about previously, meeting the patient where they are, but using those organic channels where the spend is zero. And it's like, why not? Like, why not try it? There's really no budgetary risk. It's really just about like the bandwidth of my team. But that's really where we want to get. The other channel is Reddit. Especially our local market we're just local markets. Like we're the Boston area. People are not traveling hours and hours to come to a dental school to get their teeth fixed. So we really need to like dive really deep into those Reddit threads and see like what are people saying about us? How are they talking about us? Because they are talking about us there. And then tailoring our content strategy around the way that people are messaging each other on these threads. We've also seen actually great success from meta ads, so from paid social around certain specialties like our cosmetics. And we see that the way that our prospective patients are talking to each other in the comment section. So how are we leveraging that? How are we leveraging the way that they're like asking each other about us? They're DMing us there. So those are all things that we really need to lean into because again, paid social, obviously that's budget, but the rest of it, it's for now free. We can test it out. We can see what works. That's where I really want to go.
We have a bingo.
Bingo.
Congratulations.
Nice. You're welcome. Jeremy, what are some things that...
Yeah, so very similar. I think we've backed off a lot of our paid search as well. I think a lot of it's frankly tied to more access. I mean, we used to spend a lot of money on primary care paid search, and we've taken that to pretty much zero now because it's top of funnel, kind of repurposing those dollars more mid-funnel, so areas where there are either specialty care or procedure related, very focused around that. A lot of it is, I mentioned downstream revenue, like looking at those patients or encounters that are more likely to have a propensity for a procedure, not purely motivated by the bottom line, but also in terms of the health outcomes. Those are typically the sickest patients, so it's kind of a virtuous combination. A lot of work around that. We heard this morning a lot of work around word of mouth, and we call it VOC. So we're doing a ton of work to expand our ORM footprint. For years, we've done a lot to cultivate third-party reviews, mostly Google business listings around physicians, but we've done a lot more around branded locations. So we're getting hundreds of thousands of those reviews every year now. And those, frankly, in terms of being able to drive both awareness and conversion, we're seeing great engagement there, especially now with our AEO work, and we're seeing more of the LLMs are incorporating the third-party reviews into our SEO footprint. So those two things are aligning. One thing unique to us, we've been asked a lot to repurpose focus less so on consumer, more on things like talent acquisition. So our HR team, you guys understand healthcare. We don't have enough nurses, doctors, OR techs, what have you. So we've been asked, take some of the money you would have historically spent on consumer brand and shift that over to employer brand, or shift it over, even in some cases, to politicians. Our state is kind of in a weird spot right now politically. We're getting beat up a lot in some of those circles, so actually focusing on some of those audiences. Are they influencers? I don't know, but if you can discourage a politician from popping off and saying something negative about your brand, I would argue maybe they are influencers. So we're doing a lot more of that in recent months.
I'd be curious to see a show of hands as the challenge the request that's being made of your marketing team. Is that something that others here are seeing? So raise your hand if you're being asked to shift maybe some of your marketing dollars from consumer patient over towards finding talent. Is that something that you all are experiencing? Show raise of hands. A little bit over here. Okay, fair enough. Shalini, what challenges have you faced over the last, like we said, working over the last few years, but maybe aren't working as much now? What are you thinking about trying in 2026?
So one of the things that we, like with these standard budget cuts and where we're changing our spend and stuff, one of the things that we've done, especially on the product side, is we've spent money historically on customer research, like paid market research. And when we think about what we do here is, as Invisalign, we do that research with dental professionals and not necessarily with consumers. Like we leave that, right? Because we sell to the dentist, they sell to the consumer patient. We do have a consumer arm as well, but So one of the things that we're changing now is how much are we spending on all this professional market research, qual and quant, right? And a lot of it's critical because it helps us determine what are we going to build next? How do we build our future products? This is where we're being asked to be scrappier, right? So one of the things that we are doing is toning this down in terms of let's do some more detailed customer segmentation and profiling internally, right? That's really helping us decide, well, which customers do we need to maybe go after and do either more detailed research or they are the appropriate target for maybe some of the future innovations that we want to build. It's a good exercise. If you could narrow down and sub-segment and profile your customer base, then you can build the right solution for these customers. And then you also know who to spend your time with and who not to spend as much time with. There's its own challenges there, though, in terms of why did we not know this all this time? Have sales reps been truly spending 25% of their time on a 25% segment that has no interest with us? Then why are we even bothering? But it's because these segments also change, right? Like people evolve their needs over time, and so you do have to keep them, but you want to also figure out how can I shift focus for this 6 months versus the next 6 months. So we're really looking at that and saying, how do we get better at that?
You've given me a good segue into asking a follow-up and then asking the rest of the panelists here. You kind of hit on segmentation of your customers and people using Invisalign today. How does analytics and measurement, that's what you just mentioned, segmentation is one part of it. How else is analytics and measurement playing a role in what you're doing today? And what does that look like, tactically speaking?
Right. So you've got your baseline analytics, right? How many people are buying it? How many people are using it? Like what is their volume? And so that's a very simple way to look at it is say, dentist A does 100 cases a year. Dentist B does 50. Our big question becomes how do we get dentist B to go from 50 to 100? There's so much more subjectivity, especially if you look at not just the orthodontist, and you can assume orthodontists just do nothing but straighten people's teeth all day. Now let's look at the general dentist or anyone who's like dental tangent. They're not just trying to worry about straightening teeth or selling Invisalign all day. They're doing things like your hygiene, cavities, root canals. And so then the analytics becomes even more critical to say, we can't just assume that every person translates to a number and that makes them a good or bad customer. It's really also about understanding like what is their workflow, like what are their wants and needs. So dentist B with only 50 could be far more successful in their practice because they're also doing like, let's say 50 root canals a week, whereas dentist A is doing only these cases and is maybe struggling on their root canal, hygienes, veneer, like all these other things that dentists do that we need to take into account. And so I think this is the big question that we as a company need to think more about. We got to meet our customers where they are, which is a very common phrase that everyone should be doing. But I think there's a newness about recognizing that it can't just be about the solid metric that they generate for us. It needs to be about like what value do we deliver to them and the rest of their workflow.
Yeah, I love that. As I head up the partnerships team at FreshPaint, and I firmly believe that partnerships is a value exchange for our partners, for our customers, for FreshPaint. So I very much align with what you just mentioned there at the end. Julie, Jeremy, I'd love to hear how analytics and measurement plays a role in your decision-making process today and what that looks like, again, tactically speaking.
Sure. So for us, I think a lot in the past year or so is moving away from vanity metrics, but moving also away from reporting on things like even, conversion rate, click rate, cost per conversion, and going to the bottom of the funnel and looking at analytics around, we talked about this earlier, but attended appointments and trying to get to the point, and for us, this is a challenge. Everyone's at a different spot, but like, how are we linking our analytics that we're pulling out of our ad platforms to our patient portal, to our EHR, and coming away with actually valuable data. For a while, we were looking at analytics. It was saying, oh, look how high performing these campaigns are, and they were generating a lot of demand, but what was happening to the demand, it was disappearing into the operational abyss. So either the patients weren't being called back, or they were being called back and the call calling wasn't the most effective tactic. So it's really just even moving away from any kind of traditional analytics in some sense and using those analytics more to identify like the holes in that patient journey, which is not a linear journey, obviously, but like where are the holes, where are the operational challenges, and how can marketing not solve those, but at least like bring those to the table and partner with operations to say, this is what our analytics is telling us. We're not going to keep throwing money at campaigns that are driving demand, but we're not seeing the actual patients in chairs.
So, Julie, to summarize that, like you said at the end there, it's using data to find both operationally but also marketing gaps. You also mentioned connecting to downstream data sets and getting to true conversions. Shalini, you mentioned in what you were talking about, really providing context and color to a number and a set of data. Jeremy, I'd be curious to hear, where do things stand for you?
Yeah, very similar. I think we've shifted away from more of the acquisition metrics to more of like full journey, like retention and loyalty metrics. So things like we've been heavily focused on NPS for several years, but really drilling into it very granularly at the service line level, the clinic level, the provider level to inform decision making. We talked about segmentation. We've segmented over 1 million of our patients in our EHR. So we actually have that psychographic segmentation, and then really focusing our campaign efforts on those primary target segments who are likely to have a need or a propensity. Huge effort around that. A lot of it is with the CRM system is really aligning the true conversion is not just booking the appointment or having the appointment, it's actually did you close that care gap? And so getting very specific on what are those care gaps that we care the most about that have both clinical and financial benefits, and really laser focused on that stuff. Heavy emphasis.
Yeah. Question?
Comment. I think as a group, I may be biased, but we have to do more with less, regardless of the year, the month, the day. And I think we have to pivot and adapt more and that's why I say I'm biased. I don't know what accounting does or legal does, but I just feel like as a group, as a whole, it's every day is like, they did what? It's always kind of well, now what do we do? But it's at the end of the day, we're data driven, and I think that's the thing that's really challenging. It's doing more with less, but still being, your feet are being held to the fire and saying, okay, yeah, what did you do? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And I just, it's a hat tip to everybody in this room and you guys too, because it's sincerely, it's a challenge.
Yeah. No, we appreciate that. And I think everybody, I see heads nodding when we talk about costs increasing, expectations increasing, or staying the same at the very least. Where do you all feel the pain most when I throw that statement out there? Jeremy, we'll start with you and we'll come back this way.
There's a lot of pain. I think we as a team, we've taken budget cuts 6 of the past 7 years, and they're not always 20, 30%, but a 7, 8% year after year, you cut down to the bone at some point. So we're at the bone right now. Yeah. We're also in the middle of a large Epic deployment. So my team's being asked to be heavily involved in that. So it's like you've got to do your day job, plus you have to invent a new job. And so that's painful. Like making them understand there's a human impact on the burden we're putting on them. And just acknowledging we're asking for a lot. These are difficult jobs. How can we help you grow and develop? Don't focus on just the drudgery today. How are we positioning you for success in your career? That's painful. Those aren't easy conversations.
And I would say, going off of your comment, actually, I feel a lot of pain in the sense of like the budgets being cut year over year, but then leadership coming to us and saying, well, X competitor has a giant billboard in downtown Boston. Why don't we have that? And it's like, well, that's $50,000 for 4 weeks. So it is really balancing those conversations and helping them understand, yes, I'd love to do brand awareness like that, out of home stuff. And that's something that I do want to shift our budget towards. But I think it's a lot around the issue of brand awareness campaigns aren't measurable in the way that Google ads are measurable. paid search is measurable and it's safe. So that's where I think that we feel that. And then also the constant shift in priorities that is always being thrown out. It's a healthcare issue, it's also a higher ed issue, and I sort of sit in between the two. So those shifting priorities combined with the budget cuts is,
Yeah.
it's a challenge.
I'll agree with what Julie just said. The constant shift in priorities is really painful to manage. Like whether or not you have budget cuts, right? They can give you more budget to deal with it, but it's still really painful to say, hey, you guys rejected what we proposed in December, but then in March you decided that you thought you invented the idea and that now we have to deliver it in 2 weeks. Like we could have been working on this for the past 6 months. Okay, we'll go ahead and do it since it is the right thing to do. But in order to do it well, you can't sacrifice your timeline to get it done, right? And so I think this applies to whether you're doing a campaign or building a product or you want to test out a product before you put it on the market. You take that same approach of saying like you just want to do justice towards doing it well, which means don't cut corners and just get it out the door because someone finally saw that a competitor is going to do it first.
Yeah. So competing priorities, right, is a challenge that I think most people face in today's modern workforce. And we know that leadership is not funding impressions. They're sometimes, like we just said, shifting gears pretty quickly. How have you combated that and worked with your leadership to, I'm not sure what the product translation would be, but the marketing side of things, not, talk about impressions with your leadership team, and how have you worked with them to understand what's actually important to the product from the customer's lens, and Jeremy and Julie, from your end of things, how have you kind of transitioned the marketing metrics to a conversation that leadership is more comfortable and understanding, but also receptive into you trying to achieve your goals?
I'll give maybe like an example. I'm actually kind of dealing with this right now, and I don't think I have the final solution. So, for example, there's one activity that's going on right now. We have like a sales conversion kit for kids that we have launched in China, and everyone's pointing at it and saying this is wildly successful. We should just absolutely do it everywhere, but it's very expensive to make. And so when it came to me, they were like, your role is to now figure out how we can make this a worldwide offering. And so what we saw was we made a lot of this kit. So think about it this way. It's like a cute little kids kit. And the idea behind it is that a dentist would offer it to a kid and the kid's parents, and then they would love it so much that they would proceed to get Invisalign. That concept makes sense, right? You pull people in and they buy the Invisalign. But the way they're actually doing it is you only get it after you buy the Invisalign. And so by itself, I think that's a little strange. Then when I went and looked at it, it looks like what happens is this little exciting conversion kit is actually coming from a fulfillment center. And so then we sell stuff in China. And so my question was, well, how do you know it's actually increasing sales? And they're like, well, we don't, but we see the sales going up. So obviously it must be this. I'm like, that's number one that we should not be doing, right? Like the idea should be that if you're going to rely on metrics and data, you have to at least track them and say, okay, well, this doctor had 20 patients coming in, so he ordered 20 kits, and then he was able to use them to sell 20 Invisalign sets to people. That makes sense, I think, to everyone. But the fact that we don't have that trackable data is a mystery to me in terms of why is everyone supporting this? Is it just because it sounds good and you're so excited about the sales that you are willing to push everything away? That's what I'm trying to both investigate and bring some clarity to, right? And so I think it's going to come back with maybe not a bad answer. It could be that I'm just simply pointing it out and all the information's there and we just have to pull it together. It could also be that someone's going to finally look at this and say, I think you shine a spotlight on the fact that this is actually a really expensive marketing collateral piece that we may not need to use if the sales by themselves are being generated. So I don't know, I guess I'll come back at the next session in 6 months and fill you guys in on the answer.
Yeah.
In conversations with leadership that I feel like have been successful, it's on the marketing side at least, getting granular of talking about the attended appointments, patients in chairs, those kind of conversations, getting completely away from the marketing talk, like we've said, because that doesn't resonate with for us, it's a CFO, but it's also our clinical leadership has a lot of say in how we spend and what we do. But I also think that when I bring competitor examples, that's useful, and say like, for us, say Tufts Dental is doing this. They're taking a lot of our market share. I can show you what that looks like. I can show you exactly how much of it they're taking from us. They really like to hear specific examples of what our competitors are doing, and that sort of like drives them to say, okay, like maybe we can explore spending more in certain areas, especially around the top of funnel stuff, where that's really hard for me, at least, to communicate to them the impact, because they don't see it. Like, they're not seeing, honestly, they're not even seeing our ads, but like, they're not gonna necessarily understand top of funnel brand awareness value there unless I'm saying, okay, well, X competitor's doing it, or this company's doing it. So I think that's been helpful.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of that. I think to your point, it's really making it a business conversation, not a marketing conversation. So what are the business metrics we can align on? Positioning it as it's marketing's job to drive that growth, but what growth do they want? Because like I said earlier, not all growth is created equally. So let them pick and choose what their priorities are and then show how we can support that. I mentioned things like NPS, using metrics like that people, they logically understand that's a proxy toward loyalty. And if we have a higher NPS over time, we're going to grow more. Those conversations resonate more.
Yeah. No, I love all of that. And we're getting down to the last couple minutes here, so we'll switch over to Q&A here in a moment. But one quick question for each of you before we close things. In an effort to continue to create connections, I'd love to ask each of you just one sentence, 2-sentence answer at most here. What's one challenge that you're facing as you look into 2026? And the goal here is for us to share something that hopefully somebody else here in the audience might have solved or be working through themselves, or be able to potentially talk to you about in some way, shape, or form. So I'd love to hear what's your biggest challenge, so to speak, in a sentence or two.
I think our big challenge, being that we're a big company and a famous company, is the competition coming in cheaper. I know everyone goes through this, so would love to just kind of hear how people have, what's a unique tactic on this?
Yeah.
I think a big challenge for us is redefining our brand in the market, because everyone knows Boston University, but like they have a built-in idea of what a dental clinic is. So it's like communicating what our brand is and getting that out there in a way that's impactful.
Yeah. For me, it's deprioritizing. We are very good culturally at adding more things, but not taking things away. And so I have to explain to people, if we're going to do these new things, what are the 2, 3, 4, 5 old things that we just won't do anymore? And we're at that point, we have to do that.
Yeah. Great. Thank you all. We have a minute or two for questions really quickly.
My question is for Jeremy specifically. You talked about reviews. That's something that we know is really important, but I don't really think we have the right systems in place for it. So I'm curious what systems you use.
Yeah, so I won't call out vendors here, but I think we've been on that ORM journey for almost a decade now. We initially began by doing separate outreach. So after an encounter, we'll give you an experience survey, but we're going to send you a separate text or email to give a review. That didn't work. People didn't like it. What we've done recently is really bolting it on. So if you're already reaching out, asking for them to give you feedback on the experience, give them optionality at the end. Would you like to give us a review on Google or Facebook or whatever? That is highly effective, and you get really good feedback. And we've got the math that shows just organically, people who are verified patients, they generally like their doctors, they like their care teams, they're going to give you a much higher score, and that's played out over multiple years. So it's a huge effort for us.
Any other question? Go.
Question to all three of you. What percentage of social impacts what you do?
I don't have the exact number, but it's actually really small. It's just very tiny. We have a consumer marketing arm that focuses more on social for your average customer patient, and that's where you get your brand name and stuff. But then we have separate social for actual doctor community. Yeah. I think there's a little bit more engagement there when we focus more on clinical education, but it's still pretty small.
And what channels?
Look, which social channels?
Yeah.
I think primarily Instagram and then some LinkedIn. Reddit, I think we're just starting to discuss, and I haven't dug into what that means for us yet.
I don't have exact numbers, but as I mentioned, paid Facebook ads perform very highly for us. I'd say at this current moment about on par with paid search, and which was kind of shocking for me to see because it doesn't sit in the same intent level, I don't think, or I didn't think. So that was sort of where it was a test. And for us, we've seen great success with specifically Facebook ads.
Yeah, I would say similar. Facebook is still very effective for us. I would say we're seeing more engagement. Many people don't view YouTube as a social channel, but it absolutely is, and that's been a hidden gem for us.
Okay, anything else? All right. Well, thank you all so much. We really appreciate your time and all of your focus. Thank you for joining, and hopefully you got something valuable out of the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.